the shocking news in the NFL that Maxx Crosby will not be a Baltimore Raven. The trade is off between the Raiders and the Ravens. And, I see that story. I watched Bam Adebayo score 83 last night. And in my head, I'm like, this is a shady situation on all fronts in sports. We've got a baseball team representing this country that didn't know that they needed to win a game to get out of group play. Team USA. So we've got a lot of shadiness going on here on a Wednesday on the Bleck Abdalla Show. If you want to join us, you can call us at 310-840-4910. So Maxx Crosby, back to the Raiders. The Ravens pull out of the deal. And since that time yesterday, they have agreed to terms signing Trey Hendrickson to a monster contract. What, $60 million guaranteed for Trey Hendrickson with the Ravens?
Yeah, and I think that if you go through the whole timeline here, it came out of nowhere yesterday, like you said, and you get the tweet and the confirmation from all of the NFL reporters around the country in the NFL world that said that the Ravens had decided to pull out from this deal. None of these deals are final until later this afternoon. Around 4 o'clock Eastern is when all of these deals, that is when free agency actually starts. That is the problem with this legal tampering period. It doesn't happen often. But sometimes, once in a while, a team will decide we're not happy with this deal. A player may decide, hey, I agreed to a deal with this team.
Sure.
I don't want to go to this team anymore. Maybe another team has offered me more money. Nothing is signed on the dotted line until that team has released the picture from the team account or that player has gone into the office and signed the papers. The team releases the picture of the player signing the papers. And Maxx Crosby put out a picture yesterday. He was flying to Baltimore. He went through the physical, and the Ravens say that they were not happy with what they saw from his physical, that their medical team put him through the physical, and they were not happy. That's what reports say, that they were not happy with what they saw from his physical. Now, he had surgery 8 weeks ago on his meniscus. Of course, he wasn't going to pass a physical. This is more about what Maxx Crosby's long-term health was going to be, how he was reacting to rehab from this injury. Now, his medical staff, his doctors say that he is going to be ready for the start of the season, that he's going to be ready for most of the offseason training program, for a lot of training camp, and be ready to go and return to game wrecker form that is Maxx Crosby at the start of the regular season. However, the Ravens said, you know what? We want our picks back, and we do not want anything to do with Maxx Crosby. And then earlier today, they signed free agent Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, and when we look at the Maxx Crosby situation specifically, every team is going to look at the medicals a little differently. So the fact that the Ravens failed the physical, they don't want to be a part of it long term, because I think what Adam laid out there is correct. Maxx Crosby just had surgery a few weeks ago. So he just got off of crutches, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago? And if that's the case, he's not going to pass a physical today. But if the medicals say long-term that Maxx Crosby is not a good investment, well, first of all, what did you think was going to take place? You were making this trade knowing he's coming off of this injury. Mm-hmm. You're making this trade knowing you're giving up all of that capital. Now, perhaps their doctors saw something in the recovery that led them to believe that this injury is susceptible to taking place again. That could be, and I think that's what some of the reports are kind of pointing to. But it also means that other teams may see this and say, well, our doctors know the doctor who performed the surgery. We're comfortable with this. Everyone's body's a little bit different. And I could see a team today making an offer for Maxx Crosby and getting what they want and getting the player. That does happen in the NFL. So there are situations, and you mentioned, Abdalla, that until the pictures are sent out by the teams or the signings are official, that takes place today. So Wednesday at 4 Eastern is when teams can officially send out the announcements for the signings that they've made. And so we have a lot going on today, and I think overall it puts Maxx Crosby back on the free market. I still don't think that the Raiders are going to hold on to Maxx Crosby for the entire season. I think perhaps this might drag on till the draft. And we do know that if the Ravens had 2 first-round picks on the table for Maxx Crosby and they backed out of the deal, you and I talked about it 2 days ago, that there was a loose suggestion from Rich Eisen on ESPN that the Chicago Bears offered 2 first-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason the Ravens offer was selected was because they have the higher of the first-round pick being offered this season. So if you're a team like Chicago, if you're a team like Dallas, if you're a team Philly, you're some of these teams, Indianapolis, teams that need an edge rusher. Do you still think to yourself, one team pulled out of the Maxx Crosby sweepstakes, but are we in? Is that still out there? I don't think the Raiders hold on to Maxx Crosby throughout this offseason. I think he still gets moved.
No, I agree with you. And I think that the price has gone down. I don't think that they're going to get 2 first-round picks for him. But you look at a team yesterday, and we talked about this move a little bit yesterday, and the Patriots signed Romeo Doubs yesterday. And that might take them out of the A.J. Brown sweepstakes. They gave Romeo Doubs a lot of money. Now, I don't know if they have money left over for A.J. Brown. I think they probably have money to absorb Maxx Crosby, but they have the 31st overall pick. I don't know if it's going to be 2 firsts for Maxx Crosby. It could be 1 first, and if you're trading the 31st overall pick for Maxx Crosby and then throwing in a future second-round pick in 2027, maybe a conditional pick now that you know that there's this injury issue, because you're saying, well, if you're throwing in the caveats of, well, this team didn't clear him, and because now you kind of dictate the price of what is going on. We know he doesn't want to be on the Ravens. That was the report going all the way back to the Super Bowl from Jay Glazer, is that Maxx Crosby doesn't want to be there. And that was echoed by Mike Silver of The Athletic, saying he doesn't want to be there. He's been reporting on the Raiders for a very long time, saying he doesn't want to be there. But right now, the Raiders are saying he's there. He's back rehabbing there today. He's back in the building rehabbing today. So Maxx Crosby is in Las Vegas, continuing business as usual. So I do think that there are other teams that could be involved. You mentioned the Chicago Bears. I think the Patriots could be involved. There are multiple teams here that now the price has gone down. You still have to have room to absorb the contract, but because it's not going to take, in my mind, 2 first-round picks, I still think it's going to be 1 first-round pick. Teams that are picking in the high 20s, the Patriots at 31, look at those teams that maybe look to part with a pick that isn't a top 10 pick, that are looking to move on from this. We know that the Cowboys were sniffing around, but they already made a trade. So I don't think that puts them in the running for Maxx Crosby right now.
It's Bleck Abdalla here on Westwood One Sports and the Westwood One Sports app. I feel as if the Trey Hendrickson signing with the Ravens and then the Ravens backing out of the Maxx Crosby deal, it's all connected. I don't believe that this was just a surprise that, hey, these medicals aren't good. Hey, let's call up beep, bop, boop, beep, boop, bop, bop. Hey, Trey Hendrickson's agent, you want to do a deal? Why don't you come to Baltimore? We're not going to keep Crosby. I feel like this was all happening all at the same time. And so if it's all connected, you tell me why some of these teams who they were suggested as being interested in Hendrickson, why they wouldn't make a deal for Crosby. This is from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. He put this on social media about an hour ago. He wrote, the Colts, the Bills, the Bucks, the Commanders, and the Eagles were all involved in Trey Hendrickson's free agency before the All-Pro signed and agreed to terms with the Ravens. He wrote, the Colts felt like they were close at one point. The Eagles got involved late. Tampa pursued, but they only wanted to offer a short-term deal. And so Hendrickson wanted a long-term deal with a contender. Buffalo fit that mold, but Baltimore went over the top on Tuesday night. So of the teams that I gave you right there, those teams, why wouldn't those teams pivot towards, now the Colts can't because they already traded their first-round pick for this year.
Yep.
With the Sauce Gardner move.
And next year.
But the other teams, why wouldn't they pivot Bills, Bucks, Commanders, Eagles to then try and work a deal for Maxx Crosby? I would rather have Maxx Crosby. Is that Is that on the table for some of these teams to then say, I'm going to pivot? If we missed out on Hendrickson, we're going to pivot and go after Maxx Crosby.
Well, I think it's the price, right? Because the price is obviously absorbed. And I'm not talking about absorbing the Maxx Crosby contract. The Commanders have the 7th overall pick. That's too high. That's too high for me. If you want to trade them a 2nd round pick, that high in the 2nd round, that's okay. The Eagles, to me, are interesting because if you find a way to trade A.J. Brown and you end up with a 1st-round pick, you've got an extra 1st-round pick. Trade that 1st-round pick for Maxx Crosby. You don't lose your own 1st-round pick, or you trade yours, whatever is higher or lower, whichever ones the Raiders want. The point is you have an extra 1st-round pick to play with. That's what you do. So the Commanders and the Eagles are completely two different teams. The Colts I rule out just because they don't have 1st-round picks this year or next year because of the Sauce Gardner deal. They're out to me. The Commanders, unless the Raiders somehow are willing to take a 2nd-round pick, I just think that right now the Eagles might be willing, if they can trade A.J. Brown for a 1st, would be willing to pay that 1st-round pick. I think the Commanders might be out. So I think right now you're focusing on the Eagles. That might be the move. And if the Eagles, this just isn't fair. Like the Eagles,
well, but that's what I'm saying.
Howie Roseman, what do we do? Can we just not? I would be more upset if the Eagles ended up getting Maxx Crosby than what the Ravens ended up doing by changing their mind on the deal.
And so, therefore, how did we get to this point? Maxx Crosby will not be with the Ravens. The Ravens signed Trey Hendrickson. This is Adam Schefter earlier today on ESPN television.
Well, this is about a medical issue, Greeny, and this is about how different sides interpret the condition of Maxx Crosby's knee, which underwent surgery 8 weeks ago. He was on crutches until just last week. Now, in speaking with his doctor who performed the surgery, Neil Elitrosh, overnight, he felt like the timing of the physical could have been pushed back. But he does believe that Maxx Crosby is on schedule, and they're hoping to have him ready for the start of the regular season. But the issue is, Maxx Crosby was in Baltimore on Tuesday for a physical. He met with doctors. Doctors took scans. Doctors looked at scans. And based on what they saw, the Ravens did not feel comfortable to pass him on that physical, which nullified the trade. Obviously, there are outside doctors that consulted as well, including the Cowboys surgeon, Dr. Cooper, who performed the surgery on Patrick Mahomes, who performed the surgery on Malik Neighbors, who many teams and NFL players look to for guidance. So if and when the Ravens decided to back out of the deal, it also came after consulting with the Cowboys doctor, Dr. Cooper, whatever was said. Now, the Raiders feel like the Ravens got cold feet, but the Ravens feel like they had a huge purchase. They invested 2 first-round draft picks, and once they had him in their building and reviewed all the tests, they were not comfortable moving ahead. The only analogy I could use is if you were to go buy a brand new house and it looked beautiful and you toured it online and then you agreed to purchase the home and you had an inspector come through who said he was worried about this and worried about that, would it make you nervous about executing that deal? Probably. And the Baltimore Ravens didn't like what they heard, and they backed out of the deal. So now that leaves us, as the new league year opens today, in certainly an unusual spot, because Maxx Crosby is now a Raider. His money is back on their books. They're honoring their contracts. And the Ravens now don't have their pass rusher, but they have their first-round picks back.
So that was Adam Schefter earlier today on ESPN television. I thought it was well said because I think the analogy that Schefter used was perfect. You know, purchasing a home isn't a quick deal. There's a lot of moving parts that go into it. And if you relate that to this situation, to then see the medicals and then to say, I think what's unique about this with the Ravens is that they are going towards someone with medicals that we've been talking about for the entire offseason, that it was questionable whether or not Trey Hendrickson would be the player that he used to be, because Trey Hendrickson was a player that you didn't have to give up anything. You just had to pay. Mm-hmm. And the thing that we kept saying was that, did you think you would get the same Trey Hendrickson based on his current medical situation? And so to pivot off of Crosby to then go towards someone else who could have questions as far as his medicals as well, I think is what is the startling aspect to this story.
Well, and it shouldn't impact any of the free agents that they acquired and signed the last few days or are about to sign here as the new league year opens in a few hours. But I still believe the player Maxx Crosby doesn't want to be on the team. And when you have a disgruntled player, you're going to move off of him. And someone is going to offer you a first round pick. Someone will. Whether it's the Eagles, the Bears, the Bills, someone is going to come and offer you a first round pick. And it's going to be the extra stuff that gets that deal done, whether it's a future second, a conditional third, whatever that extra language is, that's going to be what gets the deal done. And obviously, which pick is higher, which is what made the deal to the Ravens get done over the Bears and other teams. That's why the Raiders went with the Ravens deal in the first place.